Hi, pal. Welcome to I've Got Your Back, the podcast. My name is Michelle Sutherland, and this is a place where I want to empower and inspire you to tap into the deepest desires of your heart and discover the magic within. Hello, everyone, and welcome to I've Got Your Back, the podcast with myself, Michelle. I am so excited to be bringing you another episode, and in this season, which has been all about B Corp. This episode is really special. It's something that has been on my heart for a long time, and I really feel it's important to have a conversation about it and to bring some light to it. So this whole theme of this episode is the blind spots of the B. So the blind spots of the B Corp movement. And that might sound a bit weird because all the other episodes have been like, this is amazing. Like, this is a great movement. Here's all these incredible companies that are becoming B Corp certified. But actually with anything, like nothing's perfect. And with anything, I do always believe there's blind spots. However, with this in particular, I find it so significant that I wanted to do a whole episode on it. And I can only speak from lived experience. And the reason that this came to my attention is because I was working with a client, an amazing client who's on the podcast today. And that sort of came to light. So I realized, wow, like there are some blind spots with this assessment, like with this, maybe not necessarily the movement, because I think the intention is powerful, but there was some things that came up that I just felt had to be shared from this lived experience. So I'm so excited because today I've got Glen, Reiss and Phoebe Preuss on the podcast from Living Koko, and they're based down in Melbourne. And hello, welcome.
Howdy, how are you today?
Great, thank you. I would just love to ask just to share a bit about Living Koko. You're both co-founders of this amazing company that I've had the pleasure of getting to know more about, I think, for the last year. So could you just tell us more about Living Koko? Why did you start? Where does it come from?
Okay, so Living Koko, firstly, the name Living Koko. Koko means cacao, but in Samoan it also means blood. So the name Living Koko means the combination of all our bloodlines coming together to activate a space. And what we're activating is the creation of cacao products and many other things. We are a manufacturing cacao space in Melbourne, based in Melbourne, that works with over 400 domestic plot farmers in the Pacific Islands. We're a zero waste manufacturing space that is run via solar energy. We are all about sustainable farming practices and having intergenerational relationships with cacao in Samoa. It's really important that we continue our indigenous cultivation practices back home to make sure we protect our custodial lands. We're all about organic, allergy safe and vegan products, and we try and ensure that our products are wrapped with alofa meaning love, and that our products, that they're wrapped in home compostable packaging or sent out in bulk for our community.
Amazing. And why did both of you start this? What was the sort of, I always talk about what's the nucleus of the company, and it comes down to the hearts of the co-founders. Like, what was the pull or the nudge to start?
It's a good question. So not many people know, but 2013? No. 13. I was in Papua New Guinea and involved in an incident where a number of people were attacked and killed in the middle of a hike. We brought one of those gentlemen to Australia to get some surgery to help him. And through that process, we thought that we found out that they were getting not much money for cacao, wet weight, about 50 Australian cents. And a couple of us got together, myself, Steve Ward, Phoebe and Steve's wife, and we thought we could do something to maybe help this situation. And that was the actual genesis of Living Koko. And we still are trying to work with Papua New Guinea. Quite difficult. It's a different environment. And it was at that stage I just met Phoebe. I think about 9-10 months seeing each other, and come to light that being Samoan, she had some heritage with cacao, and the same idea of wanting to help people and improve community life. We were able to move into Samoa and still concentrate and look at Papua New Guinea whenever we can.
Yeah. Wow. So my family grew up on cacao plantations in Samoa, and my grandfather was the high chief of our village, but also of the district. We were at, his name was, Laulu was his chief title. His full name was Sisole John Stanley. And he activated many different Matai chiefs, Matai and villages to grow koko, cacao, and he would support to ensure that they got a good price for their koko as he helped export it to Europe.
Wow, I love this. I get goosebumps. Like every time you talk about Living Koko, I'm just like, oh, it's so pure. I love it. So why did you decide to sort of embark on the B Corp certification? Because Phoebe, obviously we got introduced by a mutual friend, Rankin Lawyers. We'll give a shout out to them, Rankin Lawyers. And when I first spoke to you, you were like, I want this certification. You know, you came to me thinking, you know, this is it. What was the sort of reason behind that? Why were you attracted to B Corp?
I think the certification is important. I think it's an instant way that you can be identified as a company wanting to do the right thing in many social and environmental areas. And although it's something that we want to do naturally, and before we understood about B Corp, we were heading down this pathway. But it's a way where you can actually put a framework around what you're doing. You can actually hold yourself accountable. There's always something you can learn and be challenged about. You can see what you're doing good, what you can do better, and see what the gaps are in your processes. And some of it can be challenging in a really good way, because you need to be held accountable, and you need to be able to stand by your claims and in my words, be somehow audited. And I think when I was introduced to it, again through Rankin and through Phoebe and yourself, like it's something that's important to us, that we can be instantly recognisable as seeking to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I think through the discussions with yourself and going through each stage, though, and as a community cultural development practitioner, I came through it with a very different lens on, well, you know, how does this B Corp certification ensure that we are telling the full story of Living Koko right through to the community, and not just recognizing the community as suppliers or customers that we are doing transactions with. Also, you know, our elders back home, the land, the kinships and relationships with our land, with nature, and also, you know, with our people.
Probably also, there's a very large Pacific Island diaspora community in Melbourne and Australia. So it's, you know, we have that connection as well through Phoebe and the business, and that accountability. And that actually come through in COVID, because whilst we were locked down in COVID, there was a number of grandmothers who live here with their families, and they wanted to teach their grandchildren how to make koko Samoa the traditional way, so they're able to buy beans from us and you know, impart that knowledge. And so that's a tremendous, not a responsibility, but a joy of having the business that we have to you know, able to contribute to that.
I love that.
You represent in a really honest and true way. Which we're blessed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. And so just for everyone listening, you aren't B Corp certified as yet, but you're going through the process. So we've worked together, we've gone through the entire assessment. Obviously huge impact because you come from such a pure purpose and mission. So, I can say from a consultant point of view, there was so much alignment because you already do what this assessment is trying to help people become, I'd say, so it was already aligned in so many ways. So you're at the end, I'd say, of the assessment, but just sort of gathering all the bits of evidence that we've spoke about that everyone loves, all that evidence that we have to document and prove. And as you say, Glen, have that audit. So of course, with an audit comes the evidence. So you're sort of at that end process. I would just love to know, and going back to what I spoke in the beginning about the blind spots, I would love for you to just share your experience so far of going through the assessment and potentially just talk about some things that came up in our conversations that you felt, oh, that's a bit strange, or how do I answer this? Like, how can I answer this? How can I prove this when it's already who we are, I would love to just, call out a couple of things that you experienced that you'd like to share.
I think to start with the language that is used within the B Corp assessment is very different to what we would use as an organization, and also from a community cultural practitioner lens. They say stakeholders, we are talking about community and elders. They talk about supply chains, and we're talking about, our shared valued approach through ensuring that everyone is honored along the way. So there was many times where I would have to ask you, can you translate that? Like, what does that mean? Or you would ask the question and I would say, no, we don't do that. But we do this. And you're like, well, that is that. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So things like that. I guess going back to the supply chain and, the supply checklist that we've spoken about in depth before. Going back home to our farmers and having in-depth conversations with our farmers back home, it's not an email, it's not a half-hour conversation, it's a half a day of sitting of what we would call talanoa, is our word for conversation, but it's also our word for sharing stories for the greater good. And you need to be in a space of deep listening and being fully present, and also to come without your Western transactional agendas, and come to really listen to what are the challenges within the community and how we can support in other ways. We may be sitting there for 4 or 5 hours, several different meals, and drinking a lot of koko. But yeah, of course. But the amount of knowledge that is shared with us about how climate change is affecting the cacao, how prices are then affected because of the climate change, how the harvesting processes and timing has changed now also because of climate change. There's all this in-depth knowledge and indigenous knowledge too that is passed down to us because we ensure that we provide that time and space for it. To call them a supplier just sounds
weird.
Really weird.
I was actually surprised in my first dealings in Samoa because you'd send an email and you wouldn't get anything back, because I didn't have a relationship at all. It wasn't until you went across and had this process where Phoebe, they looked at you and they went, oh, okay, you are going to show up every day, because so many times well-meaning Westerners go across and apply the Western way of doing business. And what I would see in Australia as a just an inquiry about, could you do this? They can see that sometimes as, oh, we've been asked to do this. And so they'll race off and do something, spend energy and time and other resources, only to find out, oh, what do you mean it was on inquiry? I've planted, X amount of trees and cultivated this crop, never bought anything. And it's because it's just a different language and a different way of doing business.
Yeah, totally.
Was there contract space in many relationships? It's contract free. So, your word is your word, how much you show up to that relationship. But not only that, we're really blessed to have these intergenerational relationships started by our ancestors, my grandfather and prior, and also, my mother and her sisters and my uncles and aunties. There's all these relationships there that also support our business and feed into our business and carry like the goodwill of our business. If we were to, I don't know if we could even put a figure against goodwill, because I don't know how to measure that intergenerational support.
Yeah. And I don't think you can. It just is. It just is the way it's been for so long. But yeah, I remember the moment that question came up, and we ended up having a chat for I think 45 minutes, an hour, about exactly what you're sharing now. Obviously, it was more in depth, and I think the key message was that I took anyway was that you can't just come up with a supplier checklist for the family or the culture that we work with. You can, so how. And I think, Glen, you said this before, how can you have integrity of what you're doing and being, and then have a checklist that completely goes against how you operate, or how, how it works,
There has to be a translation to that, and it comes down to risk. And we deliberately we have a saying, Phoebe and I, that we don't ask anyone to take a risk that we won't underwrite. So all the way along the supply chain, if something goes wrong, we don't ask the next person down to be prepared to compensate. We will take that on because it's us that wants to work with them and set up the relationship, not the other way around. So when it comes to insurance and everything like that, it's not FOB. We pay all the way through, and the insurance all the way through, because that's what we're bringing and that's what we're underwriting. And we try to keep that idea all the way through. And I think it's just a totally different business. It's a totally different way of looking at things from where I've come in the corporate world, and the way I deal with, from 100 and 120 page contracts where everything's sort of covered off and there's all levels of insurance and everything like that. It's totally different. We had one gentleman when we were in Samoa turned up on a conversation, and because he knew Phoebe's grandfather and respected him, he caught several buses and travelled all day just to bring us a particular roasted bean that we talked to him about. And because he had that respect for Phoebe's grandfather, and it was we didn't ask for it, it just showed up. And sure enough, we said thank you very much. We compensated him for his travel and for his day's work and all that sort of stuff. And that relationship endures today.
Wow.
And I think what we're really lucky to have is, a in-depth relationship with the farmers, and we don't just see cacao as an ingredient. We actually see what the trade and not aid approach with the exporting of cacao is doing for village economies back home, which if you look at the cacao trade throughout the world and throughout the many generations, it is in a good space. There are many farmers in other countries that don't get paid until the cacao lands in Europe. So, they watch it disappear on a truck and they don't get any compensation. And when they do, it's nothing.
Nothing.
For us, we wanted to ensure that our custodial lands could be activated respectfully and and that people felt honored along the way, and that the more we activate our custodial lands, the less likely they could be taken away, gifted in other spaces, and taken away from the people. So
it's also very empowering for women farmers, and when you have conversations, and it's a great initiative to bring foreign Pacific Island workers, migrant workers into Australia to help with the crop, but it leaves a gap actually back in some of the communities. So some of the cash crops and some of their own opportunities weren't necessarily being able to be looked after because at the key time people were away. So working with some initiatives to empower women and have, what's the word, Phoebes? A collection of women, but there's
like
a co-op of women who have a certain number of cacao plants, and they all look after each other and work together, and they've got their own independent income, which is a tremendous initiative.
So good. I love that. Oh my God, I could listen to you both all day, just like the stories behind this company is amazing. So I know that both of you are sort of, as I said, going through the process now of collecting the evidence for the assessment. Has there been anything else that you've been like, how do we go about this? Like, how can we like provide the evidence which is true to us, but still, in the essence, tick the box of this audit? Like, is there anything else that's come up for you?
So we don't have a board, but we have Phoebe's mum and Phoebe's auntie, and Phoebe's auntie's chief, and so we have a different sort of governance over the top of us. We have the governance that we need to have because we are a PTY Ltd business. So for us, we understand and we believe we have to be a sustainable business to be able to keep our whole pipeline working. And we've shown up. We started 4 or 5 years ago at 400 kilograms of beans. Now we're up to 6 tons.
Wow.
And the next objective is to actually bring a container for ourselves in. So we regularly buy, and we are relied upon to buy, and people know that they don't have to go hunting for us. So we know we have to be a sustainable business, because if we disappear, then we have failed in our intent.
Yeah.
Which is what drives us to come to work and be better. So translating that is I think the challenge that we find. But we'll figure it out. Might be that we have to co-opt some of Phoebe's family to be a board.
Yeah.
And a governorship board or something like that, which we can work with you to translate into that sort of thing. And then from that will start to flow some of the evidence that we're probably finding that it's a little bit difficult to articulate at this stage.
Yeah.
But we, as Glen was saying, so my mother and her friends who also are the other parents of some of the farmers in Samoa, they all get together for a Friday prayer group, and they all converse and talk about what's happening with the koko on the land, but also with the koko that's in Australia. So there's these beautiful conversations happening in this space, and that knowledge is passed on to us. So, if there are challenges with one family, or if people are going through heartache, grief, sorry business, we find out through our elders' channels, and then it adjust the way we do business, the softer approach, or we just allow space and time for that area. I don't know what box you tick.
Yeah, exactly.
That talks about that. The gentleness within business that needs to happen especially when you're dealing with micro businesses. We still have a small micro business. We know that anything that happens to us physically, mentally, it flows down into our business in some way. If one of us is sick, it can stop production. So, it's the same back home in Samoa. Just So I don't know how to.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you said in the beginning, which is language. Like, how do you, you're talking about, you have this beautiful flow of governance, let's say. So if we're using the sort of language of the assessment, you have this beautiful flow of governance, but it's called, do you have a board of directors? And it's one line and you just tick it. And it's like, how do you even provide the evidence? So that's probably where it fits in. But how do you even explain that with still, obviously some of those conversations might be sacred, or, you know, you don't want to share a lot of, you know, whatever is being shared, because some, I think, as far as I understand, some of it is sacred. So you don't want to share all of it, but you have to share something to tick this box, you know, so or show or back up. So I think it comes back to language, like you said in the beginning, like you're reading this and it's like, how can I articulate this beautiful governance flow into this box? You know?
Yeah, so you use the word blind spot, and you can see how it's totally unintended. You know, it's just the framework is entirely based on the Western way of delivering business and communicating. And we're across the both. We transcend both sides.
As a Afakasi Samoan woman, Afakasi meaning, you know, I have European, English, Scottish, and German heritage, and then I also have Samoan heritage, so half of half. You know, navigating two worlds is something that I've been doing for most of my life, and trying to understand two different ways of being. So he's looking at me like, you're not doing it well.
No, you are. Not me. I had a military and a commercial background, so the first time I come across it was like, what do you mean I'm going to sit here for 3 hours? I like it, you know.
Well, even this concept of island time, you know, everyone loves that island time thinking that it means we're always going to be late to events. But it also, I've kind of grown up knowing that it means when the flow and the energy is right, then things will happen. And as someone inviting people into their space, putting out an invitation to come to your house and everything, you know that that invitation, you know, it doesn't have the concept of time around it. When the people show up and they're ready and things have flowed easily in their space and it's time for them to come, you're ready to welcome them with open arms. You know,
we take second fiddle to an ill grandmother who needs to be taken somewhere. You know, and you just, once you realise that all, like, the village life is not intricate, but there's relationships that are more important in the village life than a transaction of buying koko. Koko is going to be tomorrow, and it can be sold tomorrow, but my grandmother and her needs is more important.
It's first.
Which is, I guess, you know, values in a Western construct. There, you know, it's getting that career, family, education. In Samoa, it's family. You know, family and kinships and relationships, but above all else, career is probably 3 or 4 down the track. So, you know, it doesn't matter that we've flown all the way from Australia to have this meeting. If something happens within the village and family comes first, and, you know, for us, it's just family first.
That's it. Absolutely.
And that rolls down through to our team as well. You know, here in Australia, it's, if something happens within their family, it's family first before we'll figure out how to deal with this. You just go and support and deal with it.
And there's another box too, which is called reciprocity, which isn't in any of these things. It's like what you give comes back, and it comes back in ways you don't anticipate it. And I think that's a great thing about the communities here in Australia that we work with and overseas. It's like people show up, you need help, they just show up.
And how do I don't know how to.
How do you measure that?
How do you measure the, you know, the mamas that come through to Living Koko and they just want to volunteer their time and help and sit and wrap chocolate? Because it's not just about wrapping chocolate, it's about talanoa. We're all hanging out, we're doing something that has a purpose, but we're all just catching up, and it looks like unpaid work, on the forms, filling it out. But there's a different reciprocity there, that they're supporting and volunteering, and we're supporting their spaces in other ways too, or even just providing the space so we can all catch up in that way.
Because I think in other environs, they'd be sitting and weaving and doing art, essential things for the community.
Yeah.
But actually that type of activity, and everyone's standing around talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, not activity.
They're doing stuff. And again, I think if we think about the assessment, like you said, Phoebe, when we went through the workers section, like even just the workers, it's like, oh, that language. But like, how many part-time and full-time employees do you have? And you're like, well, there's just us and then like 2 other people, but we have all these people that want to be a part of it, but we don't, even that in itself, it's like there's more people involved in this, but they're not on a spreadsheet, like getting paid. They're here because of they want to be.
We did an activation, an art space activation, where we brought a non-alcoholic bar, because we do a non-alcoholic beer, and we've got some non-alcoholic cocktails, and that's one of Phoebe's passions is art and dance, and so she was supporting a friend of hers in an activation and her runway collection, and people just said, "Oh, we want to come and help. We want to come and help." And we said, "Well, we'll pay you." And they go, No. We just want to come and have fun and be part of it and support you. And that happens regularly.
That's the thing, I guess, acts of service, hey? We all know acts of service, service to community is what activates light within us. So, you're not looking for monetary payments on things. You're just being able to give an act of service to a space that has a flow down effect, a beautiful ripple effect to community. There's the diaspora in Melbourne that show up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this. So in terms of so we've sort of covered, that's been great because we've sort of covered off so many things that I think I was feeling like this needs to be said, so I think that's great. What I'm specifically thinking about things that you've got from the process. So like things that you were maybe like, oh, I've never thought about that. And I'm specifically thinking of the impact report, actually, which you sent to me, and it looks incredible, but you never, until you did the assessment, you never thought of bringing this sort of impact report together. So maybe just talk about that as something that's come out that's been good from the process and going through the assessment.
Yeah, creating the impact report was great.
Yeah.
It felt like a never-ending list of, oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, we do. And just a great time to reflect on our business holistically in all different spaces that we touch and navigate. And also to help us explain to others of what we do.
Yeah.
That was really valuable.
I think it has been really valuable. Now that we are trying to get more into retail spaces, we know right off the top, like we do this, this. And you can see for even myself and Glen, and also like our operations coordinator and sales coordinator, Oji Moala, we just have more confidence in talking about it, which is great, instead of being put on the spot and going, what else do you do?
And I think that through the B Corp whole networking, because we get to attend some networking meetings as well, you're able to hit those key points that people are looking for. Give you an instant connection, and you can talk and how do you do it? Oh, we do it this way. And then I think also in going through the B Corp process, when you find like-minded businesses, they realise they're not competing with you. They actually want to help you. And so they'll share information. and we're quite happy to share information to people and say, well, this is how we do it. Happy to give it to you, just amend it to make it fit yourself, and you have just much in-depth conversations, because so many times you go to a meeting and you're just talking about surface level stuff, not the stuff that really, the questions you really want to answer. Ask, how do you do this? Because we're a bit stuck, and people just happily to tell you, and then that leads to business collaborations.
Being a business owner it can be such a lonely journey, and making sure that you're doing everything ethically and sustainably and trying to support the planet as well as community can feel like at times that you're the only fish in the ocean. But so to see B Corp certified organizations, or there's also a social impact group that is run by Rankin Lawyer Firm, and the working group, just knowing that there is this community out there just trying to do better. Hey, we're not perfect, but we're all sharing knowledge and understanding better ways to do things and planting seeds.
And that's beautiful, because you've got this sort of collaboration and open conversation between B Corps and aspiring B Corps, or just people that want to do better. You've got that. I suppose the B Corp certification and movement connects you much quicker, and so if you're in the room, like in a B Corp room, that you're going to have those more, like you said, Glen, in-depth conversations. It's not surface level. It's about, okay, what can we do here? I love that. So just finally, is there anything you'd love to share about, you might not have an answer to this, but like any suggestions of, based on your experience of going through this assessment and being, aspiring to become a B Corp, is there anything that you feel from your business and your culture that could be improved? And that might be a much longer conversation, but is there anything that comes to mind just that could be improved?
I think to use more inclusive language. It's very, I understand a lot of the clients would be, I guess, maybe larger corporations and stuff, but more social impact language that is also connected to Indigenous communities or Indigenous ways of being could help.
I just wondered, because we are a two-person management company, and we do other jobs as well, that sometimes to close the gaps can, in a timely fashion, can be difficult, even with the best intent. I just wondered if there's a way where you get entry level and you can start, sort of letting people know more formally you're on the journey and you're making your way through it. I don't know if that's possible, but I mean,
that's cool.
So it's sort of like got to be in it, and you got to get all the way through it, and then you get it.
Like you're a yellow belt.
Yeah, yellow belt.
And you're that high.
Definitely. Definitely. I do know that they have it doesn't exist in Australia, unfortunately, but they do have something called B Corp pending, where you can get something that says you're in the process, but they only have it in some countries. So maybe this is our ask for Australia. We need it. B Corp pending. But actually, where I thought you were going to go with that, when you started talking, I was like, oh, I thought you were going to say, if you're like an Indigenous owned business, you would come in at a certain level, because it's almost like one assessment fits all. And I suppose there's some benefits of that, but also there's some drawbacks, right? There's some like you're experiencing. So I was almost thinking, when you were talking about the gradient, I was like, I wonder if you come in at this, and then that would mean X.
Oh, that's a conversation, because I didn't think that. So, but it actually makes sense. Like if you are on this pathway, like you're at this grading level, as opposed, because you're not driven by, I don't really want to say that. We're shareholders of our company, so we're accountable to ourselves. We don't have to be accountable to multiple shareholders that, and everything that goes along with there, and the processes that you have to go through sometimes to be able to achieve policies and goals and that sort of stuff. So I think from that perspective, we're fortunate.
I think B Corp would benefit by actually having First Nations consultancy coming in and supporting the revamp of the assessment.
Yes.
I think in understanding language and understanding different ways of being, and First Nations representation from across global Indigenous, not just what happens in many spaces is picking and choosing one or two traditional owners that suit their agendas, not B Corps, and talking about other organizations and stuff. So to be able to have, a really good board of Indigenous, an Indigenous committee that can help them through this process. I think there needs to be more, BIPOC voices feeding into this process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what a great opportunity, because I know they're right in the middle of revamping their standards. So we'll just put it out there. Let's see what happens. I think something's going to happen from this podcast going out. Well, thank you so much. Honestly, this has been my favourite episode. Obviously, everyone else was great, but this has actually been my favourite.
You just tell us that.
No, seriously, I just feel, when you just feel something, I'm like, I don't know if I was like an Indigenous elder in a past life, but this is like so deep in me that I'm like, we have to talk about this. Like I get so like emotional, who knows where that comes from, but I'm sure it's something. But yeah, I've loved this. So thank you so much for your time. For everyone that's listening, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you? Because I know that they'll be like, I need to see more of this company. I want the cacao, which is amazing.
They can find us online at Living Koko. That's Koko, livingkoko.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Actually, some of the wonderful young person deals with that for us.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you soon. Thanks everyone for listening.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much for listening to I've Got Your Back, the podcast, and our season 1, which has been all about B Corps. I have got a wee gift for you because I really believe this is going to help so many people and so many businesses. So as we know, there's currently 6,500 B Corps certified globally across 161 industries in 89 countries. And this movement is not slowing down. It's gaining momentum and it's in momentum. And I really want to gift you a guide that tells you everything you need to know about becoming a B Corp and how to actually get certified. So make sure you download this guide after listening to the podcast and let me know what you think. Chat soon.